there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and we are back with Empire at War, and we've got a whole tactical analysis of all of the characters that we find in this really very exciting set, and we're going to kick it all off with the very exciting character of Ahsoka Tano, the Force operative. So she is a hero Force user, and we're going to go through everything about her. We're going to look at the size on her dice, we're going to look at her ability, we're going to look at hit points, who you can pair her with, cards that are good to use with her, the full shebang. Now then, let's have a look at the dice to start with. She has got, so they're all black sides, there's no modified sides here, and we have got 2 melee, straight up melee damage, and 2 sides of those. We've also got the 1 discard, which is an interesting one on there. We've got 1 shield and we've got 1 resource. Now that die is fairly underwhelming, apart from those 2 damage sides. I mean, we're only 1 damage away from being a Vader damage dice, which of course is a 3/2. So a 2/2 is pretty strong. That's quite good. But of course everything is always relative to that points cost. And her points cost is 13 for the single die and 17 for the elite version. And I think if you're trying to assess that die against those prices, it's fine. It's not super brilliant, but it's fine. I mean, I think we're really happy when we see those melee sides. Those are good, strong melee sides out of a character that costs these kind of points. But the other 3 sides, the 1 resource, that's fine. The 1 shield, we are in Hero Blue, and what we are seeing, of course, in both in Spirit of Rebellion and in the current set is more ways of utilising shields and taking advantage of shields. So I'm less inclined to say that the shield is a sort of a bit of a duff side. I think there are blue hero builds that will really take advantage of it. And then the 1 discard. A single discard always feels pretty weak. It's a bit like a single disrupt. It's less likely to be really impactful. 2 discards and 2 disrupts, those are definitely where it starts to get a bit tasty. So a 1 discard is a little bit. So certainly for the shield and the discard side, I think that's what keeps the points cost of Ahsoka down, because it certainly isn't her ability. Her ability it's bonkers good. It really is very, very strong. So it is, after you activate this character for the first time each round, you may spend resources equal to the number of dice that you just rolled to ready her. So, making it really obvious, if you have the single die version of her in play, the 13-point version, then when you roll her in, she's got no upgrades, you'll pay 1 resource and you can untap her again. You can ready her again, sorry. So if you go for the elite version and she's got the 2 dice, you'll pay 2 resources. If you stick an upgrade on the single die version, you're going to pay 2 resources because it's got 2 dice, and so on and so forth. Now this ability is really good in a number of different ways. Really, really good in a number of different ways. So firstly, we find that any ability that allows us to use a character twice in a round is extremely strong, especially if they do have decent dice. And Ahsoka's damage sides, as we've discussed, they're good, they're really solid. So getting the chance to use those again, that's really strong. And these untap abilities create all sorts of opportunities for you to do quite clever things. So for instance, in the games that I've played with Ahsoka, she's been quite good to go with if you have another character who is near death. Okay, because if they're near death and they've got some redeploy weapons on them, well, you can use Ahsoka, and you can still untap her after you've used her, have her dice in the pool available to use, but she's still going to be available for later on in the turn when, if your other character cops it, those upgrades are going to redeploy onto Ahsoka, and of course she's been readied again. So that can be really strong. It feels like you're almost getting, you're not just getting double value out of Ahsoka because you're getting to use her again. It's like you're getting 2.5 times the value out of her because she's also picking up cards and using them that turn that normally when you have a character killed and it redeploys, you'd either have to wait quite a long time in the turn to be able to use this other character, or you just have to wait till next round. And of course, Ahsoka allows you to roll your dice in, get them in the pool there, and then still use those redeployed weapons later on that same round. Things like that, they really help to create pressure on your opponent, and they help to make it feel like, oh, I've just dealt with that character, I've just dealt with that dice because I killed that character, and now Ahsoka's going again. She's already done me for 2 damage and discarded a card, and now she's coming at me again with an upgrade on. It's powerful, it's really good, and of course you haven't had to pay for that upgrade dice to be able to use it, because it wasn't on her when you readied her again. So there are some really nice little things that you can do with a character who can roll in and then ready again. Just another couple of things. I think that ability, it also can be quite expensive, and so I think you need to have some way of having an engine to run with it. Now you could say, well look Christian, and this is actually the way I would play with her. If I have the single die version of her, and then I stick a good upgrade on her, that's only 2 resources then, that's my turn's resources, to be able to use her twice. And so you're getting 4 dice really out of that equation. Now that feels pretty good, that feels quite nice. And I actually prefer using Ahsoka, I think, and her single version, a 13-point version, and then having a good weapon on her, rather than using her 2 dice version. Now other people will disagree with me on this, but my feeling is that if I'm going to get to roll out again and have another chance at getting some more damage, which is primarily what we're going to use her for, I like the odds of having a lightsaber upgrade where I've got a 50% chance of hitting some damage because it's got 3 damage sides on, rather than going for rather than paying 17 points and then really I'm only going to have 2 characters if I go for a 17-point Ahsoka in my team. Paying 2 resources but still only having a 33% chance of hitting damage on that second dice. I'd much rather pay the 13 points, be able to have access to a 3-character team and more health, more characters with weapons that can redeploy onto Ahsoka even if they die and she can go again, and take advantage of those weapons that have 3 or maybe even more damage sides on them, rather than trying to do it on the 2 twos, which are admittedly good sides. Just the odds are better. Now then, in terms of builds that you could put her in, I do like 3-character builds with her. I think Padawan is very good to go with her. Padawan has 3 damage sides, and so with the 2 twos and then the 3 black damage sides on the Padawan, you've got really strong character dice there. Padawan also has, of course, this fabulously good ability where you can put those weapons into play on top of Padawan for 1 cheaper, and that's saving you resources that you can then use to be untapping Ahsoka and taking advantage of her. I quite like being able to play a Shoto lightsaber for 1 resource onto the Padawan, and then even if that, and then being able to still roll in Ahsoka, pay my 1 resource, untap her, and have that extra that extra go available to me. I really like that. So I think another potential use, I don't see a lot past that. I mean, one of my favourite builds that I've seen Ahsoka in, or that I've made with Ahsoka in, has been all the single ladies, as it seems to have been termed, which is Ahsoka, single dice, which is Rey, single die, and then Padawan. So with Padawan you're getting these cheaper upgrades out, and then whether you're taking advantage of ambush weapons in on Rey, or whether you are using your resources to be untapping Ahsoka, you've got a lot of power there, and you've got quite a lot of hit points. There is another character you could potentially use with it. I mean, the Jedi, the Acolyte. I'm not super excited about that really. You've got a 50% chance of taking advantage of the Acolyte's ability with Ahsoka's die, and that's okay. One of the things I will say about Ahsoka's die is if you can make any of those discard, shield sides or resource sides 2 of, I think that starts looking really good. So and of course you can make that that discard a 2 side, and you can make that resource a 2 side with the Jedi Acolyte, and of course you can also make her damage sides 3s, which starts being really cool then. But it is at the cost of another character who's a bit squishy. I don't know if I'd perhaps rather, I think I'd rather have Rey in there, or maybe another Padawan. That's something for you to have a play with. In terms of cards to go with Ahsoka, there are a few. I like those cards that take advantage of making her other sides better. So for instance, I have started playing Do or Do Not with her, which is one of the cool new 2-player starter set cards. I mean, okay, you got the 1 in 6 chance that you could lose the die, and that is a bit rubbish, especially if you've paid a resource to get it back in or more. But I mean, making that die 3/3 and a 2/2/2, I mean, it becomes really strong. I really like that, and I think if you have already, if you have paid your resource and used her a second time, it feels like it almost feels like it could be damage out of hand, or it's something unexpected to deal with out of hand, because your opponent probably isn't expecting you to use Ahsoka's dice that you paid for to re-roll back in again and just hit for a discard. But when you can do or do not it and hit for 2, and it clears out the last 2 cards in his hands, one of the ones he was saving on, you know, that starts becoming a bit more of a tastier play. And of course, if you hit the 3 damage, if you make it 3 damage on the melee, then you're really laughing. Another good card, I think, of course, is Training Remote. It has a similar effect. You're going to end up most of the time getting +1 added to those, with the potential for a +2 if you've got that 1 resource. And to turn one of those dice into 4 damage, that's really very cool. And finally, I think because you're using quite a lot of resources to be untapping Ahsoka and really getting the most out of her, I think then being able to play Destiny in decks that you are using with her, I think Destiny just gains a lot more value. For instance, if you are able to roll out some of the other characters that you've got with her, and then use their dice to be able to get out a good lightsaber on her for free with Destiny, and then you get 2 goes with her. Oh, that feels pretty strong, and of course you can get some pretty big upgrades out with that. And if you've got something like like a Luke's lightsaber or something like that on Ahsoka, it starts becoming really very strong, being able to pay those 2 resources to untap her and use her again, or 3 if you've gone for the elite version. So that's Ahsoka. I really like her. The 11 hit points, it means that she sticks around. It's really good value. I mean, I kind of feel like I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd given a 10 with this points value and that dice, but 11 really is that little bit extra that helps her stick around for a bit longer. It makes a big difference going from 10 to 11, as I'm sure if you played any amount of Destiny you'll have realised. So she feels like she sticks around. Most of the time we're going to play with a 1-die version. That means people aren't going to be really excited about primarying her. But of course she's got this great ability that kind of demands your opponent's attention. And I think if you're looking, how do I play against Ahsoka? Well, clearly Disrupt is going to be strong against her. because it's going to switch off her ability. If you can prevent them from using resources to untap her, that nullifies her ability. And if they've just got the 1 dice version of her, that's really not very exciting. 13 points for a character that you're really struggling to ever take advantage of being able to go again with. So if you can have an aggressive disrupt option, I think that is very strong. Other than that, there's not a great deal to do to deal with her. Your standard mitigation, your standard removal of dice. It's because it's not like she's an astonishing damage monster. But you do need to be aware of the fact that they are going to be able to potentially pressure you a lot. Because Ahsoka, as long as she's got resources to be able to, she just brings the pressure. Even just a single diversion. With that 1 lightsaber on, if she's able to hit her 2 and say a +3, that's 5 damage. She could do that twice, and that's 10 damage. That's ridiculous. It's really, really powerful. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to be playing around that. And maybe your disrupt sides take on a little bit more significance in a matchup when you're coming up against Ahsoka, and perhaps it isn't an automatic reroll. Anyway, that's Ahsoka. I'm really looking forward to doing a lot more of these. My aim will be to get through the whole of the Empire at War set. So if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the ones that I've done previously, please hit the like, share it with friends. Anyone who's new to Destiny and still trying to get their head around all of the huge array of characters and the ever-expanding array of characters. And if you really enjoy these videos, then do feel free to come and check out the Patreon. You can join just $1 a month, and of course it's really, really helpful for me to be able to keep making this kind of content, and it'd be great to have you in a little community and joining in with discussions and chats of tactics and team builds and all the rest. Anyway, until next time, keep enjoying your Destiny.